Lauren's going to pull up our slides for us, but I'll go ahead and just do a quick introduction of the two of us. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Some of you may have seen pieces of or heard pieces of this presentation from Eddie last year. It is Growth and Grief, Building Bridges Through Postpartum Depression. My name is Morgan Scadden, and I am currently working in Arizona as the Sensory Screening Program Manager at the Department of Health. My colleague and friend who's presenting with me today is Lauren Moncondia. She is working at the Southern Utah School for the Deaf in St. George. She's teaching preschool, and she and I both have background and experience in early intervention, home visits specifically, and working with parents who have brand new babies who have just received a diagnosis of hearing loss. So we would love to get feedback and interaction as we go through our presentation today. I know that it's a little shorter of a presentation, so please feel free to have questions or comments in the chat. We'll get to them as soon as we can. And just one quick note, as we go through, we will use the verbiage both postpartum and perinatal mood disorders. Perinatal is kind of an umbrella term that includes pregnancy and the postpartum period. We're going to primarily focus on that postpartum period after the baby has been born. So, all right. I did want to ask a quick question as we get started. I wanted to see kind of the makeup of our audience today. You can write in the chat if you'd like, if that's available. Who's a parent? Who's a professional? Just so we can kind of gear some of what we're talking to the people that we're specifically speaking to.
All right, so our objective today, we'd like to go over some of the markers of postpartum depression so that we can identify it when it comes up. We're going to discuss postpartum mood disorders and potential effects on early language development, specifically for kids with hearing loss. And we're going to discuss methods for supporting parents during that early postpartum period as they learn about hearing loss specifically. All right, so many of us, as we have been in the field of hearing loss, have seen these targets before, but this is the targets that have been set out for early intervention for kids with hearing loss. So by 1 month, we would like every child to have been screened for hearing loss. By 3 months, we'd like the follow-up testing to have happened so that we can confirm a diagnosis. By 6 months, we want kids enrolled in intervention. And if the family is choosing to go the cochlear implant route, that's recommended to happen by 12 months. So all that's happening in that first year pretty quickly. And during that time, parents are managing a lot. They're getting really limited sleep. Feeding difficulties can be something that comes up for a lot of families. And just figuring out a whole new life schedule with work and childcare.
So when I first started as a brand new baby early interventionist, I started working with the tiniest baby I thought I would ever work with. She was 4 months old. We were so excited. And I am going to read a little bit of this quote to you, but fast forward 3 years from that time, and I had my own little 4-month-old baby, and I was sitting in a rocking chair in the middle of the night, feeding my child, and I thought to myself, oh my heavens, if Turkey New Grad Morgan came to my door right now, I would just shut my door and send her away because I could not handle anything that I was bringing. So I thought that I would reach out to that mama. She and we worked together for the entire 3 years. Her daughter was in early intervention. And I just sent her an email and I said, hey, this is the thought I just had, and I want to see what your actual perspective was of that very, very early time. Her daughter had been diagnosed right after birth with profound bilateral hearing loss and was on a cochlear implant track. And she was so lovely in her response, but this is what she said to me. I was just so tired in those first few months. Some days I didn't see the point of sessions when she couldn't hear our voices yet. Knowing how well she's doing now, I would do it all over again. You were definitely passionate about the best way to help her, and I loved that, even if I didn't have the energy to match your passion at the time. I was trying my hardest to be present in each session through the fatigue and just trying to keep her entertained. This is a mama who went back to work within 2 or 3 weeks of our initial visit, and she and I used to do appointments at 5 p.m. after she got home from work. And as I moved through my time in early intervention, we went from this little baby at 4 months old being the smallest baby that I encountered to starting to see little ones at just a few weeks old. So between 4 and 6 weeks, I was getting babies on my caseload.
Let's talk about those first 6 weeks, because that's exactly what I saw too, Morgan. I started seeing more and more families in those first 6 weeks of life. And those 6 weeks are pretty rough for the parents. So 6 weeks from birth, mom is still dealing with cramping, bleeding, incontinence, sometimes they're dealing with incision or laceration care. They're dealing with breast engorgement, swelling of hands and feet, night sweats, hair loss, not to mention hormone fluctuations and mood changes. And now we're dealing with a new professional who's got this idea in their head of exactly how important making these decisions about hearing loss are, how important it is to get started, how much time has already passed that this child hasn't been able to hear. And we're adding a lot of pressure, unintentionally or intentionally, on parents that are in one of the most physically and emotionally draining periods of their lives.
So we took the opportunity to talk to a couple other parents that we were working with, and just to get some of their perspectives, and so many of them were thrilled to share with us. This mom said, I cried at the doctor's office when my daughter got her diagnosis, and that's pretty uncharacteristic of me. I feel stupid about it now, but my hormones were a wreck. So even when we're looking at that, the follow-up appointments after the newborn screening, these are all still happening in those first few weeks as well.
Another parent shared with us, especially us moms who just delivered those babies, hormones, lack of sleep, sore boobs, share your facts with some emotion. Sorry, the next one doesn't want to come up. There we go.
This was a mom who had her babies in the pandemic, and her response to having one of her twins have a single-sided hearing loss was that she didn't have the bandwidth to shower, much less learn a new language. And I think that these things are really telling, because this is true life experience that we as providers don't see and often don't even consider for the families that we're serving. So Postpartum Support International states that people of every age, income level, race, and culture can develop perinatal mood disorders during pregnancy and within the first year of delivery. They also report that 1 in 7 moms and 1 in 10 dads as well. So dads or partners also are people that we need to be taking into consideration here, are reported to experience symptoms of depression and anxiety during that postpartum period. It's really common for these symptoms to begin 6 to 8 weeks after the birth of the child.
Something Morgan and I noticed is that sometimes that first visit we'd have with a family that was around maybe 5 weeks would go really well. The parents would seem really excited. We would be all set. And then that next visit, the parents seemed like different people. And it makes sense why. because they probably had that onset of these postpartum depression and anxiety symptoms. So to overlay our 1-3-6 timeline again, this whole timeline is happening within that year, and those postpartum experiences, those postpartum mood disorders can show up at any time.
Symptoms of depression can show up during pregnancy or anytime throughout that first year. And while the symptoms do differ for everyone, some that are very common are feelings of anger and irritability, lack of interest in the baby, appetite or sleep disturbances, crying and sadness, feelings of guilt, shame, or hopelessness, loss of interest or joy or pleasure in things that they used to enjoy, and possible thoughts of harming the baby or themselves.
The symptoms of anxiety are constant worry, feeling that something bad is going to happen, racing thoughts, disturbances of sleep and appetite, an inability to sit still, as well as physical symptoms like dizziness, and nausea. Approximately 6% of women and 10% of postpartum women develop anxiety. Sometimes it's anxiety alone, and sometimes they experience it in addition to depression. The parent that I worked with shared this with me. She said that postpartum hormones definitely had an impact. In their case, their daughter failed her newborn hearing screening, but wasn't officially diagnosed until she was 3 weeks old. So the time in between was a blur for her with trying to heal and take care of the baby while worrying about how her hearing appointment would go. This parent shared with me and said that, I remember my anxiety was relentless all the time, and I had never had a lot of anxiety before. I was always anxious about her diagnosis and what it meant for her. And looking back, I think that anxiousness was definitely magnified by postpartum hormones. It's a lot to go through to welcome a new baby and then a surprise diagnosis. It ends up all okay, but it's a whirlwind when it's happening.
So as providers, we want to be doing the best we can for our families, but how could we possibly know if a family might be at risk of experiencing postpartum mood disorders? So when we initially sit down with a family, we often take a case history, and we learn things like birth history and family circumstances. We learn about the social supports that families have, stressful life events, what the labor and delivery experience were like. You click the next. Can you click it 2 times for me? And then just general experiences that they have with their potential finances and things like that. All of these are also risk factors for postpartum depression and anxiety. So if we're learning, it's very obvious, right? If you walk into the home of a 17-year-old mom who just has a new baby with a hearing loss, we already have a big red flag that we need to be on the lookout for struggles with engagement because she may be experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression.
We also have some overlapping risk factors for postpartum mood disorders and hearing loss. So some of those include complications during pregnancy, a traumatic delivery, time in the NICU, prematurity, and maternal diabetes. So in case histories, we may also come across these factors that are part of the hearing loss that could also tell us that we need to watch out for postpartum mood disorders.
So there was a 2013 study by Quittner et al. That examined the effects of parental behaviors on the oral language outcomes of young deaf children who received a cochlear implant. And their results indicated that maternal sensitivity and cognitive stimulation had a similar effect on oral language growth as the age of cochlear implantation. So when we have a parent who has a postpartum mood disorder and a child with a hearing loss, we're at risk for a compounded risk of language delay. Estimates range from 15 to 20% of women experience depression following childbirth. This percentage is on the high end for women who are living in poverty. And for teen parents, rates can be twice as high. One of the symptoms of postpartum depression is limited interest in or interaction with a baby. And this on its own can contribute to communication delays and language delays in an infant. And again, when we layer that on top of the already existing risk of a language delay for a kiddo who was born with a hearing loss, we have extra reason for concern.
So parents that are experiencing these symptoms may not be able to actively participate in our intervention in the way that a lot of providers imagine. So we need to be more flexible. We need to be more understanding because these parents are already dealing with guilt and shame as that just comes as part of these postpartum mood disorders. We need to not add on to that because as professionals, we can be so eager. We got to choose this field. We chose it because we find it to be exciting and exhilarating. And that's not the experience that the parents we're working with are sharing at the beginning. Maybe it will be someday for them, also exciting and exhilarating to see the progress. But that's not where we're starting at the beginning. And we can really amplify that burden on these parents who are already experiencing depression and anxiety and may already be feeling like failures about other aspects of their care of their child. A parent told us, I didn't have postpartum depression or anything, but when I got the diagnosis, I felt weak, scared. The evolving information was overwhelming. As I stayed involved in the community, I saw so many different responses, and early intervention became my lifeline. The repetitive nature of the sharing of information really helped when things felt too overwhelming. And I found that to be so powerful that even though she wasn't one of that percentage of parents that experienced postpartum depression, all of that information many times was too much.
So we have a couple of quotes here with like recommendations or experiences again from parents. But before we jump into that, I'm going to throw a wrench in our works. But I want to see, because most of you here are professionals today, parent-infant advisors, teachers, I'm going to call you all out, but I want to see a raise of hands. Who has been frustrated because a parent seemed like initially they would be really engaged and then they just weren't? I have, absolutely.
For sure.
Right? And maybe a little hypercritical of parents who aren't meeting what Lauren mentioned as our vision for how these sessions should go, how a parent needs to be engaged, how they need to show up to prove to me that they're invested. I don't think it always has to look the way that we envision to be able to actually get success. So some of what we heard from parents were things like, I feel like sometimes the professionals helping us added a little extra fluff into my daughter's diagnosis. They were uneasy to state exactly what was going on initially. So being honest is really valuable, even if the honesty is hard.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. This parent said, I felt like if I didn't make sure my daughter was all caught up by 3, that she would never catch up. Because everyone said early intervention is the most critical time of a child's life. So I think along with being honest, providing balance in what we're telling them and realistic targets.
And then this one I felt really was profound too, because I want to make people feel better. But show compassion, but don't make promises you wish to keep but can't. This goes both ways, right? If we get your kiddo up to age level by 3, everything's going to be fine. Or if you just show up, everything's going to be fine. We need to, again, be honest and not operate in generalities.
Morgan, it makes me think I inherited a case, and the first thing the mom told me when she met me was she said, You don't know us yet. So you're not going to tell me what I want to hear because you don't know what that is, because I only met you 5 minutes ago. But I want to know realistically if my daughter will ever talk, because I feel like I'm doing all the things and everyone keeps telling me it's going to be fine because I'm doing all the things. But we've had an implant for 2 years and she isn't making sounds. And that was heavy. That was a heavy conversation to be put in that place. Cause like Morgan, I want to make people feel better. But she was absolutely right. I did not know them well enough or know her child well enough yet to make them feel better. So all I could do was give her the list of things that I would want to know about why her child wasn't making sounds yet. And it was hard.
We also know as professionals that it has been drilled into our heads that this is a critical time period. We need to do everything we can as quickly as possible. And the overarching question here that really is how we want to have what we want you guys to go away considering is, how do we provide robust support for that infant's language development and be very mindful and respectful of that family's unique first weeks and months with their new baby. This is time they never get back to have their tiny baby.
So we're going to change this to another screen so that we can look at this question with all of you. We'd like to invite your responses. So if you've got your smartphones around, you can scan that, and then you'll be able to type your responses and it will go up for everyone to see. While you guys are navigating to this page, I'm going to tell you a story about my first job and something that one of my coworkers taught me that I felt like really hit this question of respecting those unique first weeks and months and helping parents feel empowered during this time period. So in one of my first weeks on the job, I was talking with this coworker and we were planning to go. It was going to be the first visit with this family we were going to. And Marianne told me that she always starts by asking moms what lullabies they plan to sing to their child and what books they had already planned to read. And then that's what we did for the visit. She reinforced that those early plans, the things that they were going to do that they had been looking forward to throughout those pregnancy months were still a good idea. They were still the right thing to do for their child. And that's always really stuck with me as being so respectful of the parents.
Thank you for all of you who are typing in responses. I want to also just add, I was thinking about this all morning, but just for the sake of like removing stigma, that I personally am an individual who experienced significant postpartum depression, and I have depression and anxiety just as a general facet of my everyday life. And what I have found is that often we have a preconceived idea of how everyone appears, especially when we look at these lists of symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety. You may not see it because you may not be the safe person for that parent to show the hard things. And there may not be anything you can do about that. Miss Danny, who was the mom that I first started working with, she was lovely. Our visits were fabulous. I was not her person. She was not letting me in to the hard things of her life. And that's okay. You don't have to convince everyone to tell you everything that they're going through, but being mindful, because there are days where I can show up to you being in the midst of a panic attack and having been panicking all morning, and you wouldn't know because I didn't tell you. So people have hard things, and I hope that you guys can just at least keep it in the back of your mind. So even if it's not overt, you can approach families with gentleness and grace overarchingly.
I appreciate someone who's a parent shared. She said, as a parent, I wanted to be told that it was okay to feel sad in the beginning. And I wanted to be given information about language choices and be respected in the decisions we were making. That's so important. And especially that establishing respect. Because like Morgan
Yes.
said, even if we can't overtly have a conversation about postpartum mood disorders, we can show respect in everything that we do.
These are great responses, guys. Thank you.
We
Can you
also
scroll
have
down? And the other ones
just a
below?
couple, yeah. Let's see, those are the ones from before, so I think they're showing up at the top.
Okay.
We have just a couple minutes left, so if you have any questions for us as well, feel free to pop those in the chat or to throw them up on here as well. Either way.
I think this is a great comment. Give the parents a few weeks to adjust while appointments are being set up, while checking in gently. Lauren and I had this conversation aside from a presentation at some point in the last year about how we, working in state services, there's timelines with IFSPs, and we felt a lot of pressure to make sure we were keeping on track. But the family in that context has a lot more power than they realize. We have an obligation as service providers to initiate those services, and the family can pause things. The family can say, I need a little more time, and we don't always do a very good job of helping them know that that's an option.
Yeah, Morgan, I think that's an easy thing for providers to add into their practice. So make that phone call, you know, because our agency is saying, oh, you've got to meet with this family within 3 weeks of being given the referral. So you make that phone call and you say, hi, you know, this is who I am. This is what I do. My agency would love it if we can meet within 3 weeks, but if that's not a good timeline for you, we don't have to. You can say, I prefer to have this meeting at 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
And this is one of my favorites. I'm so routines based. And I know a lot of us are. It's the direction, at least, that a lot of language professionals have moved in the last few years. But it was so incredibly important to me as a mom to find ways to engage with my kiddo when I couldn't get out of my bed. And so I can snuggle and tickle him while we're laying in bed together. I can read him a story in bed. It doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be fancy. We can talk while we're loading the dishwasher. We can sing lullabies, snuggling together on the couch because mom couldn't get out of jammies today. That's okay.
I think also offering flexible options. I mean,
Yes.
one thing the pandemic did that maybe nobody likes is that we are all so much more familiar with electronic ways of communicating. And so offering families that seem to be struggling with keeping those appointments other options, like let's connect on FaceTime, let's connect on Zoom, because I mean, I have not yet experienced the end of pregnancy, but I am currently pregnant. And if someone wanted to come over to my house right now, I wouldn't let them because I've got dishes. And I would be mortified if anybody saw all my dishes. And so if I could just, you know, have just a screen where they can only see part of my house, I would appreciate that. Oh, I love the idea, incorporating into their bonding.
Yes. And it's harder work to do as a professional. It means that you can't have a one-size-fits-all process for engaging with families. But it's so valuable. And I can tell you from my own practice that you see it in the outcomes of the children. It does make a difference.
All right, we are just about out of time. These are our resources if any of you want to go read further into postpartum mood disorders. I'm gonna leave a minute in case anyone's taking a picture. These are our references, some of the research studies Morgan was talking about. And this is our contact. We're happy to share those resources or references with you again if you'd like, or if you want to continue the conversation offline, because Morgan and I both really love discussing this. Oh yeah, someone asked in the chat if we could share our slides. If you want to shoot us an email, we'd be happy to do that. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren and Morgan. We will also be posting this webinar on Eddie's social media. And so you can find this recording there by next week. And if you need any questions or want the slides, like Lauren said, reach out to Lauren and Morgan. But thank you guys again for attending. And oh, it looks like they want to see the resource page again.
Absolutely.